Our foster care system is shattered. And this podcast is about how we as a community can come together to bring about change. Change in the system and changing the lives of children in foster care. Hi, my name is Rob Scheer. I'm the founder of a national charity called Comfort Cases. I'm an advocate for children in foster care. I'm a public speaker. I'm an author of A Forever Family. But most important, I'm a dad to 5 of the most amazing kids. Welcome to the Fostering Change podcast. Well, good morning, everybody, and it's Rob Scheer, and welcome to another episode of Fostering Change. It's so hard to believe that we are already almost halfway through the year. We've had some amazing guests on, and we have done some amazing things, not only with Fostering Change, but for comfortcases.org. But I am so excited about our next guest. He truly gets what it means to have a large family. Okay. I always talk about how I never thought that I would ever be a dad, and to be a dad to 5 of the most amazing humans. My oldest son, Alex, is 20, my sweet daughter, Amaya, who's 16, my sweet boy, Makai, who is 14. And by the way, Grayson just turned 14 as well. And then, of course, I will never forget my sweet baby boy, Tristan, who's 12. But my friend Willy, he's got us beat. He is actually a father of 8 kids. And Willy, welcome to Fostering Change.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always happy to discuss something that is sort of unavoidable in my life. So yeah, I like to attempt to infect others with this idea,
Well, let me tell you something. I've read up on you quite a bit, and you've been doing some amazing things. One of the things that I really want to jump in before we even start talking about how you and I both could fill a school bus, I would love to talk about your experience when it comes to recruiting foster parents. I noticed that was something that you have been doing.
Yeah. So in 2013, a partner of mine, Thomas Kroom, and I started a nonprofit called Go Foster. We sort of disbanded it in 2019 because they hired the department hired a bunch of people that were on our team, and we kind of said, well, okay, that's a good sign. Anyway, we're getting actual foster parents and people who know what's happening and have experience in the system plugged into the system rather than just constant outsiders. So, but the idea was to recruit and retain foster parents. Any agency you talk to, they're going to tell you biggest challenges: recruiting, retaining. And we initially it started. So he's also a professor, as I am, and initially it started as kind of discussing it as a research project, right? What if we could collect some data on recruitment efforts and see what's working and what's not, and maybe certain types of recruiting messages get people excited and get them to sign up on a piece of paper, but don't really translate into actual homes being opened up, or maybe maybe the exact opposite. Maybe some messages get fewer people to sign up on the information sheet, but really solidify them into the system in a strong way. And we started talking to different agencies about the viability of such a research project, and quickly became aware of the fact that, at least in Florida, it's all decentralized. So every judicial circuit has potentially different agencies working in there and everything. And it kind of quickly became apparent that if we were going to even begin to try to do anything like that, we'd probably just need to get control of what those messages were. And then the more we thought about it, the more we thought, well, we'd like to maybe play with different types of messages, frankly, things that maybe the state can't say, or an agency contracted with the state can't say. But from a, purely the perspective of influence or persuasion, you'd think, well, that could probably be a pretty powerful message. Things like, so people tend to fix a problem. If it's a need, if it's this vague sort of, oh, it'd be nice if you helped, they'll say, yeah, that would be nice. And people who do that are nice. And we'll do it another day. But if the building's on fire, they're going to act very quickly, right? If there's a big problem. And of course, state agencies are deeply incentivized to make it look like there's not a problem, right? If they say, "Yep, there's a big problem. We're running scared. We don't know what we're doing. We're messing things up," then obviously they can't do that. They're going to lose their job. But a third party can come in and say, maybe something a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more assertive. And we just kind of wanted to be able to play with those ideas. And if the state did something that was weird, we could point that out. And if they did something good, we could point, not that we're trying to be necessarily adversarial, but yeah, that we have the options, right? And if, obviously a lot of recruiting that goes on in the foster world is religious. And say, well, one idea that I would have loved to have implemented that we did not implement was, a little, this is stolen from university recruiting, right? So when somebody from FSU calls their alumni, they might refer to the student donation rate of the University of Florida, because us versus them gets more stuff done than, hey, you're on our team, help us out, right? Again, it's positioned more as a problem. Hey, there's a problem. UF gets more donations than we do, and that psychological process is like completely different, right? And so we thought about, again, never did it. It was saying, hey, go find the most outlying. I'm trying to choose my words very wisely. Find the biggest outlier religious sect in a given area that has gotten like one adoptive family or foster family in their ranks, and then go and point it out. So if it's I'll pick on Scientology because I think that might not get me in trouble as much as others. But so hey, did you know that Scientology is the fastest growing pool of foster families in this district, in this county, in this state, something like that, and get everybody who is not on that team to go, well, I don't know if I like that, get something in the game, try to inspire people to move, and then really just test the results, right? And admit that we don't know a lot about foster recruiting. It's a different type of ask. It's a different type of message, right? We know about persuading people to buy cars and other things, but this is a way bigger commitment than a car or a house. This is, the biggest thing I can maybe compare it to would be, like organizations that go around and recruit missionaries, right? We're not asking for your money. We're not asking for a slight change to your lifestyle. We're kind of asking to turn everything upside down. We're asking you to be okay with the idea that your couch may never be suitable for display to other adults again. There's always going to be some creature or mess hiding in the cushions, and it's a big ask. So with that big ask, the sort of things that we see from marketing and social psychology that would motivate people to come help don't necessarily apply, right?
Yeah, but God, Willie, listening to so many things that you're saying, my mind is just spinning because first of all, I think that the biggest mistake that we made, and by the way, whether it's in Florida or in my state of Maryland, I travel the country, I talk to social workers, recruiters, nobody knows what they're doing, by the way, and not in a bad way. It's just because we all seem to be on different islands.
Oh yeah.
And I think one of the very first things that we have done is we have continued on that myth of these kids are all bad. And we have continued on that myth that people don't realize that kids come into foster care because of choices that other people made. And when
Yeah.
it goes back to, you're circling back that wagon about religion, I wrote an op-ed on the Hill about 2 months ago that I feel like we've done a disservice when it comes to our religious base organizations no longer being a part of child welfare. And again, I'm not talking about your, and get me in trouble, holy rollers. I'm talking about, I look at my church. I raised my 5 children, my husband and I. We have a deep faith in the United Methodist Church. And my minister and I all talk quite often. Never has a social worker ever walked in the doors of our church and said, let's talk about foster care. Didn't happen. But what I have seen our state do and our county do, and by the way, I live in one of the richest counties in the country and in our state, they put up billboards at the bus stop. to recruit foster parents.
Yep. Sounds about right.
What?
Well, there's the temptation to mistake activity for accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing something, even if it's not fixing the problem, even if it's not producing desirable results, well, at least I get to pat myself on the back and say I did something. Now as for the billboards, chances are they got those donated, as a PSA, so hopefully they're not spending money on that.
I would
And
love to
then,
say that. I would love to say that you're right, my friend, but I actually got to see the budget, and
oh,
there was
nice.
actually money spent on the budget to put these there. I was absolutely horrified, because again, my opinion, Willie. I'm just telling you, as a dad, I grew up in the system. My children are from the system. It is an industry that makes money on the backs of children,
Mm-hmm.
and they budgeted money to put those billboards. And by the way, that is to attract a certain type of person. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And what I'm always seeing, and again, Willie, I want you to educate our listeners on this, because what I'm always seeing is it's about how much money that you're making and not about the life that you can change a child.
There are certainly those elements, and I understand that it takes money to do this right. I have been critical with people here in the state of Florida with the idea of that just increasing funding is going to be, this is it's like the easy answer, right? And don't get me wrong, probably a lot of people need more funding. That's not the issue, but to say, well, we do a better job recruiting, we do a better job retaining if we had more money to give them, or if the caseworkers were better paid. It's like maybe, but there are other systemic things going on that are, messing things up, and it's not just money. It's partly that maybe the type of people you're going out of your way to recruit are maybe not the best people. It's partly, I mean, one of the things we did, and this is still going, even though Go Foster has ceased operations in any official capacity. We still have a rather large community that interacts with each other, and to me, that's one big thing that can exist to keep the system in line, right? I mean, it needs to be a self-checking, a self-regulating system. There needs to be accountability. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but it's happened more than once. I can tell you the last time it happened was in a training class here in Florida, and there's a foster parent who was saying things that should make this person not able to be a foster parent anymore, should exclude them from the system entirely. And nobody, myself included, regretfully, nobody said anything to this guy. And then immediately, it's one of those, you're very good at winning fights and winning battles, 5 minutes afterwards, right? And I mean, as soon as I left, I was thinking, damn it, like that was exactly what's been on my mind. That we should have circled around that guy and said, hey, are you being serious right now? Did you just say that to us? Are you kidding me? And it's just not there. I mean, and the children's privacy comes into play, and I understand why there are so many rules to protect the children's privacy, but at the same time, there's an unintended consequence of that, which is people don't know what's happening.
They don't.
And they think it's happening in Haiti. They think it's happening in some bad neighborhoods of New Orleans. They don't realize it's happening, right around the corner from them. Right. They don't realize that somebody that they work with had their kids removed because they're a horrible monster, and that's a problem. So it's like, talk to people about recruitment. You talk to people about this, and they just don't know. How are they going to do anything if they don't know? And I will say, the one thing that we do know about recruiting, and you can check me on this. Hopefully, it's consistent with your experience, but the people who get involved in fostering or adopting knew somebody who was fostering and adopting before they started. They had some exposure to it. So it's I joked about infecting, we want to infect other people with this idea, but it's not exactly a joke. It is a contagion effect. It's, for me, it was my mother. After I left the house, she started fostering and adopting kids. For a lot of people around Tallahassee, maybe it was my family. And it's just, there's all of these fears, all of these horror stories. I mean, they make horror movies about this.
Yeah.
Think about that. You can't even make a horror movie about an adopted dog going crazy without, pushback. But you can make a horror movie about an adopted child losing their mind and burning the house down and stuff. And so you get all these horror stories. And then sometimes what's needed is just to see somebody doing it and say, oh, well, that kid's a foster kid. Well, that kid's really sweet. That kid's really funny. That kid's really clever.
Yeah.
Oh, and that family's a foster family. Well, they don't live in a bad part of town, and they, it doesn't seem like they're running a child housing business, to make ends meet. And the kids seem well taken care of, and a lot of these kids just need a fighting chance. Are some of them, victims of trauma that's going to haunt them for the rest of their life? Yep, big time. But probably most of them in one way or another, but in like minor ways, often like the rest of us. It's not, it doesn't make for good TV. It doesn't make for good drama, right? But they're just kids that need a little bit of a chance, and you run alongside them and you do the best you can and cross your fingers if you need to. And yeah, it's that simple. But people put all these barriers up. I heard you had to have a lot of money. I heard you have to, well, and in Florida, another issue is that the different agencies will have different requirements. So if I call Florida Baptist Children's Home, that gets money from the state, but calls themselves a private institution, they are going to ask questions about my religion. And in fact, we have families in our community here locally that are Baptist, that are members of the local Baptist church, that were denied by Florida Baptist Children's Home. In one case, the reason was that they had some bottles of wine in their cabinet. And that was deemed by this particular agency to be a problem. And for a while, this family thought, okay, well, we wanted to help, but I guess we can't foster because we have wine in the house. Now, they could also get rid of the wine, but I don't even think the agency gave them that opportunity. They just were told, no, we're rejecting your application because your lifestyle does not fit with what we're doing. And then, of course, that can be applied in about a million different directions, from your religion to your consumption preferences to your sexuality to any and everything, right? And so you find people that want to be a part of the system, want to help already, have redesigned rooms in their houses to have bunk beds, and they're completely bought in and ready to go. And then one agency out of maybe, depending on the area, 2, 3, 5 agencies, tells them no, and they don't realize that there's actually a bunch of other agencies you can just call.
You are right about that. And you know what? I want to get into that, because I want to get into the fact of how different the agencies are. But first, we're going to take a quick little break here. Everyone, I am so excited about this conversation. We haven't even started to touch about the fact that Willy has 8 kids, 7 of them actually from foster care. So, it's going to be a great second half. Listen, do me a big favor. As you're on the treadmill, leave us a review, share this podcast, and please make sure that you go on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there's someone that you feel that can move the needle, just like Willy has been doing, please email us at fosteringchange@comfortcases.org, and we truly want to hear from you. We'll be right back. This episode of Fostering Change is sponsored by Comfort Cases, a national nonprofit that is inspiring our communities to bring dignity and hope to youth in foster care. For just $10 a month, you can support the Comfort Cases mission to eliminate trash bags from the foster care system. For every $10 donated, a Comfort XL duffel bag will be given to a child entering foster care. Please help us be part of the change. Go to comfortcases.org and see how you can help a child entering our foster care system. Welcome back, everybody, to Fostering Change. I am so excited for our guest that we had. Hopefully, you've been able to tune in to the first part. If not, don't always forget, you can go to comfortcases.org where we have all of our podcasts, or you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe and watch our podcast there as well. You know, Willie, we were in the process of talking about different agencies. And
Mhm.
so I live in Maryland. When we first started out, deciding to be parents. Of course, I was a kid who grew up in the system, and so foster care is the route that we ended up going. We lived in the District of Columbia, and so we went out. We started with DC Child and Family Services. And by the way, if you read my book, A Forever Family, I talk about those nightmares of people who are getting a license who could not believe that they got a license, went through the same class, said things that I would be like, I wouldn't allow you to even watch anything, much less a child,
Right.
but still was handed a license and were able to receive children. And then we were one of the first couples to be able to be transferred from a public agency to a private agency. And let me tell you the reason why. I
Okay.
wouldn't shut my mouth.
Mhm.
Every single time I turned around, I reminded them what they should be doing for a child instead of what they weren't doing for a child. And it was, I'll never forget it. It was Dr. Chapman from the National Center for Children and Family. She said, I will take this family. You know, and at that point, we had two that we were adopting, two were being reunified. We ended up adopting all four of them. But with a thing that blew my mind is how different all the agencies are. For instance, if you have a child in the District of Columbia, you can't have a bunk bed. You cannot have bunk beds within DC. In certain counties in Maryland. Now, it even gets even crazier. My son, who is 20, who arrived in our home at the age of 18 2 years ago, when we called the agency that we found out that he was with, and they found out that we were a same sex marriage, they wouldn't return our phone call. Mind
Okay.
you, this kid is 18 years old. He's been floundering in a system, and we're finally going to give him a home where he's going to be with us forever. And because you have an issue with the fact that my husband and I are the same sex, you're not even going to return our phone call. It's crazy like that, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, there are some peculiarities about the system that make you really scratch your head and realize that maybe this is not about the children after all. And that's one big one, right? So I understand if you are an agency affiliated with a certain belief system that maybe you have some constraints placed on you. But if you are charged with managing wards of the state, shut up. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter what your preferences are. I mean, there's been a lot of debate here in the state of Florida over whether these types of agencies should be allowed to discriminate based on their beliefs. And my concern with that, because like, look, I want to say, I understand the talking points, right? You're a private agency, you're privately funded, you're allowed to do what you want. Cool. Except you're not privately funded, or you're not just privately funded. So the minute you take that check from the state, you just have to give up some of that, right? And the other thing is they're not handling children who identify with their belief system. They're handling children of all types.
Yeah.
We've had some issues and some debates with the idea of, well, what are you going to do when you have a homosexual child who is looking for a place and you assign them to an agency that doesn't believe that homosexuality exists? How are they going to adequately serve that child? And I know they'd have a response to that. I just don't think it's a very good response. I just suspect that it's
Well, the response
platitudes.
is, I mean, let's just look at the data. I mean, look at the amount of children who are in this system who do consider themselves LGBTQ. The suicide rate is higher. The homelessness rate is higher. The movement of them moving from one house to the next is higher. You know, again, I say it all the time. I am a I'm a true believer that I love the fact that my children have been raised in a church, but that was our choice, our
Oh
choice.
yeah.
And my children are at an age that if they don't want to get up on a Sunday morning and go to church with their dad and I, we don't sit there and say, you better go or you're grounded. We just hope that maybe some way we can instill being a good human at the end of the day is what truly, matters. So you actually have 8 kids.
Magic number 8. Yes.
8. Wow. I need to know
And
the
one
age.
of them has a child, so I'm technically a
Oh my gosh.
grandfather.
So what are their ages?
Okay, so the youngest is 8. He is the only birthed one, the only little towhead in the bunch. When the other kids are talking about how they were once orphans and they were adopted, he tries very hard to like be a part of that, and say, yeah, me too. I had a different mom too. And they have to say, no, you weren't adopted. And he will get very upset. No, I was adopted, at least when he was younger. So it's funny that he's the oddball. He's the one excluded sometimes. Most of them are between 8 and 14. We have one that is 22 and one that is 32. The 22-year-old came into our house when she was about 16, right after she turned 16, I think, actually. And then the 32-year-old we adopted as an adult, actually, which was kind of a strange experience because she's biologically related to some of the other kids and, would come around and have dinner and hang out and, help do hair and do all this sort of stuff. And she was very involved in what we were doing. And then one day she just sort of asked, or I guess it wasn't really asked, but she said, I'd kind of like to have a family too. And we kind of, it was like one of those like, ouch, damn that, okay, yeah, of course. And we thought she just kind of meant informally. And we said, well, okay, you're one of us. Come on and, come to holidays and, hang out. And then a week or two later, she just came out and asked, is there such a thing as an adult adoption? And we said, not totally sure, actually. We have never looked into it. I think maybe looked into it. It turns out, yeah, there is such a thing. And we get some raised eyebrows about that, which I'm pretty comfortable. I mean, we're pretty far into the deep end now. So, there's nothing normal about what's going on around me most days. But, at first we thought, well, this is for emotional reasons, right? This is for psychological, I want to feel like I'm connected. And that's true. But then we start realizing, well, if she gets in a car wreck, the day before we adopt her, we can't just go to the hospital and visit her. She's not a relative of ours. We're not next of kin. We're not anything. And I'm assuming that most nurses are a little bit too busy to sit there and let me, diagram out why we're sort of her parents, but not really her parents, and it opens up a lot of doors to just have a family. It turns out from the psychological and the emotional to just a really practical, tangible things that you try to do in life. And
I
so
agree.
that's been
I agree
interesting.
with
But most of them, if you see me around town, you'd see me normally with about 6 kids,
Right.
which is fewer than 8, but still a few.
So we are going through an adult adoption right now with our son Alex.
Mm.
And same thing that you went through, where Alex came to us and asked if we would adopt him. Again, he'd been living with us. I was like, you'll always be part of the family. And I always thought that it was the psychological that he wanted. And as a matter of fact, today, here's my
Uh-oh.
Alex adoption folder because it has been crazy for what we've had to go through to adopt him, even to the point where we hired an adoption attorney. So this afternoon, I have a meeting with our adoption attorney because we didn't have our original marriage license in the application. And it's like, they do not make it easy for kids. And again, we're not talking about a kid who was raised with his mom and dad or his mom or his dad. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah,
a
you're
kid.
not having to get rid of somebody legally or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's by the way, which is the craziest part, here his bio father, who has had nothing to do with him his entire life, my son is now 20 years old, and I'm now having to track him down just to sign a piece of paper. And it's
Yep.
like, My son is 20. So yeah, I the whole adult adoption thing is definitely, we need to make it a little easier. We need to make it a little easier.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I agree, and it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me to go through as well, and given how difficult it is to get older kids, and where older is defined as a number that might shock some people, in some states and some areas at sometimes old might be more than 3 or 4 years old. That
Yes.
might be considered an old child, and they, deem them a risk of not ever being adopted because people like little babies who I don't know if they want to like try to pretend like they birthed it or something, or I don't know what, personally I don't let babies in my home.
So we did the baby
I've
thing. We had a 6 month old, a 2 year old, a 2 year old, and a 4 year old. We went through it, did it, done it. Don't want to
Oh
do it
yeah,
again.
yeah, we've had plenty. Oh yeah, we've
You know.
had plenty. I'm just they're not welcome anymore.
Yeah.
And I've told people, if somebody knocks on the door late at night and I open up the door and there's a baby, like in the movies, right? Um, I'll call somebody to take care of the baby, but that baby's not coming out. I'm done with that. I've done my time. I'm not that long suffering.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
agree, Willie. I agree with you 100%. I have to tell you, what a great conversation. I mean, what a great conversation. I have one more question to ask you. Do you think you will have any more?
it seems very unlikely at this point, just because, and this is, I'm sure you get this question a lot as well. How many did you want to have to begin with, and when are you going to say enough is enough? And I was kind of like, well, this was never the plan. The plan was to try to adopt the first two placements that we had, which we did, and then we thought two, that's perfect, nice even number, and then the what happened was we kept getting phone calls
Yes.
about impossibly dire situations, and they'd say, hey, can you take this baby? I'd say, okay. And then we had a child we ended up adopting that was being fostered by some friends of ours who were a little bit older and had just done some adoptions, and they weren't really feeling like they were able to adopt another one, and we already knew him, and his background was pretty traumatic. It looked pretty bad on paper. And as when you decide whether you want to adopt a foster child, you have to go read their binder. Well, the binder can be like this big or this big, or, and he had two big, big binders. And it was not because of anything he did. It was because of things he was exposed to, and very horrible things. But we sat down and read that, and couldn't shake the thought that anybody who reads this is going to say this kid's broken beyond repair.
Right.
Uh, he's got to have some issues, and he's the sweetest kid we have. Um, but because of that binder, I mean, that binder was almost making him, I don't like the word, but kind of unadoptable.
Of course.
And it's like we knew him. He got along with the kids. We already had a relation. It just, so we've always asked ourselves, does this make sense? Can this fit in with our lifestyle? Can we accommodate this? And if the answer is no, then the second question is, okay, well, is it a simple fix or is it a big fix? If a simple fix, for us at one point was, okay, we're going to need an extra bathroom or two. So we're going to need a new house. So it's not super simple, but, with something we could do. A thing that we couldn't fix would be, we're absolutely out of money. We can't stretch the dollars anymore. We're out of time. And frankly, I think that's where I'm at now, at least, where I don't have any more bandwidth to spread. I can't be spread any thinner than I am right now. So, and that's one of the other reasons that I think we kind of backed away from the Go Foster stuff, was saying, it's a trade-off trying to decide, okay, do I spend time with this? We can plan this event and do some awareness, or I can just make sure I'm bonding with my kids and I can make sure that they're doing okay. And it sort of became a pressing issue to say, let's make sure the kids in my house are like well taken care of. So
I get it. I get it as a dad. I get it. Well, Willie, listen, I am just absolutely, I cannot thank you enough for this conversation. The whole reason that I started Fostering Change over a year ago was for this, to have conversations, to educate our community. And by the way, I say it often, our community is not our zip code, it's our human race. And so many people do not know the impact that they can make in a child's life, even if that impact is just for one day. Now, listen, everybody, you all can be part of the change. Not all of you are made to adopt, not all of you are made to foster, but each and every one of you can make a difference. And that difference can be in mentoring. You know, I see so many group homes where kids could need help with homework, go shoot a basketball. There's so much that you can do. And so please, visit comfortcases.org, see how you can impact your community. But the flattering thing you can do is make sure you share this podcast. You can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, all the podcast platform. But you can also go to YouTube and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please make sure that you leave a review. We love a review. We also would like to hear some questions. Maybe there's some questions that you didn't hear from Willy and you want to have a question. Reach out to me. I'll make sure that Willy gets that information. And once again, everybody, help us change the system instead of continuing to blame the system. Have a great day, everybody. I would like to thank all of you for listening to the Fostering Change podcast. You can subscribe on all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, including Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Make sure you follow Comfort Cases on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter at Comfort Cases. Check out the Fostering Change blog at comfortcases.org. And I know some of you have a question, and I know some of you would love to be a guest. Please personally reach out to me at fosteringchange@comfortcases.org. That's fosteringchange@comfortcases.org. Then do me a big favor. Please help spread the word. Share this podcast. Share it with your friends and your family. Remember, I say this quite often, we're all part of the same community. And that community, it's not our zip code, but our human race. Let's all make a difference.